thank you if you just joined us. If you missed what I said before, we're just waiting a few more seconds just to get everyone admitted from the waiting room. All right, we're at just a minute past 2, so I'm gonna kind of get started with our intro. First of all, thank you to everyone for joining us today. We're very excited to have you for the event Balancing Elder Care and Family Commitments During the Holidays. We just want to do a quick couple of housekeeping notes before I get into the intro. Please, if you're not on mute, put yourself on mute and keep yourself on mute throughout the presentation. At the very end, we will have time for Q&A. So at any point during the presentation, you can put your questions in the chat feature and send them either directly to myself or to Kathleen Farrell, or you can send to the whole group and we will read them out at the end. So thank you again to everyone who has just joined or has been with us since a couple minutes ago. My name is Yasmin and I'm a work-life specialist and I work with Kathleen Farrell. We have a wonderful session for you here today. Balancing Elder Care and Family Commitments During the Holidays with Marty Richards, who will be our guest speaker today. Marty, for more than 50 years, has been a social worker and teacher, receiving her Master's of Social Work from the University of Washington in 1970. She has spent her career working in the community, in long-term care facilities, and in institutions of higher learning, including the UW. Marty has worked with individuals and families and has also been a community educator. She frequently makes presentations at professional forums and within the religious community. She is the author of Care Sharing, a reciprocal approach to caregiving and care receiving in the complexities of aging, illness, and disability, and the book Caregiving, Church and Family Together. She's also published several articles on the subject of elder care, and she currently sits on the Washington State Dementia Action Collaborative. Thank you again to Marty for hosting this session in partnership with us and the whole U. I will hand this over to Marty now, and she will get you guys going.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm joining you from very gray and not stormy at the moment, Port Townsend. However, the rain is coming again, and we're not exactly looking forward to it. So I'm going to be talking today about how you balance the needs of everybody in your family or your friends or whoever you're connected with during the holiday season to make it more comforting, simplified, more easy to negotiate, because there are a lot of things going on. So what I have found about caring in the holiday times, if you're already a caregiver hands-on, and it's difficult, the holiday season can make the caring much more complicated for your families and your friends. And I like to use the word care partner, which includes you, the person or persons cared for, and others who help you. And one of the things I want to stress today is that being a care partner with another is a marathon and not a sprint. And I think what happens to us, we get revved up for the holidays just because that's what we do, whatever holiday you celebrate. And you still have the person to care for later on. You still have your job, but there's this kind of time when everybody has a different set of expectations. And then you go on and you continue to care. Families have resilience. I believe that even though I'm going to talk about some tough stuff today, families do have the ability to bounce back. And I want to stress today, as we talk about some of the concerns that we might have during this time, that we need to emphasize what a person can do and not what they have lost. Now, I know that some of you care for people with dementia, and this is a especially tough time. But what I have found in my work for many years with people with dementia, if we only emphasize what they have lost and don't include them or just feel bad about it, we lose out on the possibility of some real sharing of the moment and sharing of joy. Also, it is important to remember that even small changes, small things can make a big difference. Now, the winter holidays can be difficult. I mentioned the persistent Northwest gray has effect, and shorter days mean more darkness. And for many of you, as well as myself, we know that sad seasonal affective disorder is a real thing. So that balancing all these needs of work, caring, and celebrations can be exhausting. And that's real. And part of it is what we put on ourselves, and what part of it is what we're hearing from the world around us. So I think we also need to remember that COVID is changing everything for many. The new protocol for inviting people to come to visit anymore, especially if there's someone who's not vaccinated, is to do rapid testing before events. And, you know, maybe people have to Zoom that used to come in person. Beware that all during this time of the holidays, no matter what you're celebrating, Hanukkah or winter solstice or New Year's or Christmas or Kwanzaa or whatever, the world and local news continues to overwhelm us, and hustle and bustle is all around us. We live in this environment. We need to be aware of it, but we can get overwhelmed by it if we're not careful. Now, I think it's important, first of all, to understand that expectations of the holiday may differ between you and your family members, whether they be younger members of your family or the older persons or the people you're caring for. And I'll be using elder care ideas, but I know that some of you may be caring for someone who's younger as well. So even though I may use elders and older adults, I realize there's a great difference in what you may be dealing with personally with your loved one. So I want to read something from a book called Voices of Aging Adult Children and Aging Parents, and it's by a woman named Missy Buchanan. And listen to this to hear if any of these sound familiar to me. I've adapted this from her work. Here's the voice of the carer. That's you. Maybe it's silly, but I fantasize about picture perfect holidays, the kind where the family gathers around, shares good food and makes memory. And so I decorate for each appropriate season. Now that my children are grown and scattered with families of their own, holidays keep us connected. And to me, that's more important than ever. Why do I dread them so? Trying to balance the desires of my loved one with the needs of younger family members is getting more and more difficult. I wish for my loved one that they could see how hard I'm trying to make holidays special. My loved one gets irritable with the commotion that naturally comes with a large family and complains about how late we eat and how the teenagers never look up from their cell phones. I wish I knew how to satisfy my loved one. The pressure of creating a memorable holiday takes its toll on my patience. I want to enjoy the holidays and those I love instead of dread them. Does that sound familiar to any of you? It certainly does to me. There was a time, and now let's think about what the older person or the person being cared for might think. There was a time when I fussed over every holiday, trying to create special memories for family and friends. I cleaned and I baked and I decorated and I shopped. But now that I've grown older, I haven't the energy to celebrate in a big way. But sometimes my kids don't get it. At my age, the holidays just stir up confusing feelings. I feel joy laced with sadness, excitement mixed with dread, sweet memories mingled with devastating grief. I look forward to having family and friends gathered round, but there are also empty chairs. At times, the laughter and conversation sounds like chaos to me. Everyone talking at once, children running around, toys scattered like an obstacle course. My family forgets that I often can't hear what is being said, that I'm afraid of falling, that I don't have the instinct. They think I'm being cantankerous. But even in a house full of family and friends, I somehow feel alone. I think that this conversation between, or the reflections between the older adult and the person that's doing the caring are the kinds of things that need to get shared. And often in a time when we're told to be jolly and happy and whatever, we sometimes don't take the time to do that. I have a brother who died at Christmas time. I will remember my brother this Christmas, like I have for the past 3 years, because he's no longer here for the holidays. Most of you have loved ones who have, and maybe you have lost loved ones as well. Think about that. And I want to share with you a perspective that a 104-year-old gentleman shared with me many years ago on Christmas Eve. I was talking with him, and a lot of his Scandinavian friends were enjoying Christmas Eve, which is what the Swedes and Norwegians actually do a lot. And he said to me, you know, Marty, the holidays are faded for me. I only experience them through my children and my grandchildren. I think that's an important piece of wisdom that he shared with me as his friends were celebrating, and he didn't feel that he could connect with that. I think, though, having said that, that we can build on what you and your loved one can do together that can increase enjoyment. I think we need to be aware of the sadness, but at the same time, we have to find ways to experience joy. So let's just take a couple of minutes to look at the idea of loss and grief. Obviously, as I just mentioned, remembrance of who is not there for a celebration can cause a lot of grief. My husband, my kids, the people who can't be there because of long distance, somebody in the service somewhere. Also, the older, this was reflected in that reading I just did. The loved one may realize what they can't do. I can't cook the meals. I can't have everybody over. And then you may be struggling with your own grief about what your loved one is no longer able to do. You know, my mom always made the best dessert, and she can't do that anymore. And one that I think some of us have, if we have very elderly relatives, is the sense that this may be the last holiday together. Or some of you may already have experienced some of that with not having seen someone during the COVID time, and then they've died or they've gotten more ill. And in a sense, you already had that last holiday together. A death or a major change in a person during a past holiday season can bring sadness. Part of my work in the community has been as a care manager, which I retired from. And now, ironically, at 76, I'm getting a care manager for my sister who I care for. And what happens is everybody becomes aware of the limits of what's going on during that holiday season because they're seeing one in a new light. And that can bring up issues. Remember that with those losses, certain music, the smells of Christmas, or the lights of the Hanukkah menorah, or other reminders can be very, very difficult. Acknowledge such losses because these have profound effects on you and the people that you care about. Again, it doesn't have to be morose, but if we don't deal with that, we just stuff our feelings inward and we try harder and harder and harder to be more into the festive spirit. Remember that also that understanding the losses make people now also think about their spiritual losses and the joys. For example, someone who's always gone to midnight mass, someone who's always stayed up late for New Year's to celebrate the new year and can't anymore, can't stay awake beyond 7 o'clock. What are those things? What can you bring to someone that's different? Do we have to celebrate New Year's Eve at midnight? Can we celebrate it at 12 noon? What about having the ability to watch a service on TV for Christmas? What about Thanksgiving? What can we bring together? Or Hanukkah, or whatever else you're celebrating. Would make a comment here I meant to make earlier, and that people do feel blue and sad. If losses are too much, you may need to look for a person, a friend that you trust to talk about it, or your support network. And you need to share the tears if needed, even though the holidays are time for games and fun and food and music. The tears are important, and if they don't get shed, they go deep inside. So just remember that and be open to that. Oops, I pushed the wrong button. There we go. So let's talk about some of the issues with the balance. And one of the things we all need is humor. That is for absolute certain. Nothing is, remember this, put it on your foreheads if you need to. You are doing the best you can with what you know and are able to do. There is no cookbook. I can give you some ideas today about what you might do, but they may not work. So remember to be flexible, and the best laid plans can go astray. And I will tell you from my years of experience with myself and my family and my older family members is that you never quite know for sure what's going to happen. So be open, be flexible. Now, I talked about the losses at this time of the holidays and what we remember. But we also have the possibility to share joy. And I love this picture because it sort of captures for me what the poet John Ciardi once called ultimate weed, WHEE. So how do we provide those moments of joy, even in the midst of dementia, even in the midst of a person who can't get out of bed, or a person who has very, very limited use of their body and needs to get around via wheelchair or other assistive devices? Well, I think it's important that we ask a person that we care for what celebrations, music, food, rituals that they enjoy, that they might enjoy. And ask them for options in planning festivities when possible. So if you're going to have some people over, well, what do you think our menu should be? Do you have a favorite thing you'd like me to make? Or is there some way that we could decorate the Christmas tree that you'd like? Should we use white lights or multicolored lights? Small things for options in planning, and keep them included, and also can help you as you make decisions for the holidays. Be mindful of mental and physical limits. So don't try to do a massive holiday jigsaw puzzle with somebody who has severe dementia. It's a recipe for disaster. Work together on simple tasks, maybe maybe the person made a huge Thanksgiving dinner, and now maybe you can help them arrange snacks on a plate, or making simple ornaments, or arranging flowers or greens, something that's in their ability that will give them joy and help them to begin to get ready for whatever holiday you're going to have, getting the menorah out and putting the candles in. And whatever it is that thinking of doing that's important to your family or the group of people that are around you, include that person in the planning, but not to the point of making them anxious, but to help them feel included. And I can't say enough about holiday music. Holiday music can bring up sadness, but it also can bring back memories of enjoyed music. Now, for me, I want to hear really good Bach Christmas music. Maybe your loved one likes Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Maybe the songs of this season are different between you and your loved one. Is there a way to talk about that? Be ready for tears, but also be ready for laughter. And remember that music gets through to people, even with severe dementia, even when other things don't. And I could tell you chapter and verse about that. But a lot of my work right now with people with dementia and my friends and family is to use music and the arts to get through. Read familiar and long-loved stories or poems of the season. What did you love growing up? What does your loved one like? Share memories of past holidays. Get out some old photographs or pictures of the holiday. And don't expect them to remember chapter and verse, who this was and where this was. Just tell me more about this picture. Tell me more about what you remember, your favorite things about past holidays. And it's important that people share those loved ones, because again, it's mixed bag. It's both happy and sad for people. Laugh, humor can get you through anything and can be fun for you and your loved one. And sometimes I hear things from people who are very frail that make me laugh and laugh and laugh, because humor is the way that they survive, can help you survive. Savor the moments you have together. So be present to that person. Don't be thinking about the 15 gifts I have to get or the food that's sitting in the stove or whatever. When you have that time with your loved one, make it your time. And try not to be worried about all these other things or what's going on at work or all of the kinds of things that happen to us. And I would say, and what I've learned over all of these years, that older people and people with dementia have said to be open to moments of joy, and they can be unexpected. And it's okay if the memories are vague or they're not correct. Don't argue. It's how the person perceives it, and you're sharing together to open yourself to a moment of joy. Now, I like to talk about soothing the season because you do have a lot of responsibility. You're thinking about the older generation and the younger generation. You're thinking about your job. You're thinking about getting things ready. So one of the first things I think is that as a care partner, you need to be at what you can do, what is good enough. Remember, none of us are perfect. Now, I don't know about you, but the idea of good enough is a hard one. And sometimes I think if I only did a little more here, if I only did a little more here, if I only did a little more here, well, pretty soon you've got a list longer than what you ever started with. Adapt events to take into account each generation's needs. So some of us are in the position where we have an older adult who really likes to nap in the afternoon, and we have younger kids, teenagers with their girlfriends and boyfriends who visit one family part of the time and then your family part of the time. How do you work around that? Talk about it before it becomes a long drawn out day for your loved one and they're falling asleep and you don't know why. What's the best time? As I mentioned, New Year's Eve does not have to be celebrated at 12 midnight. What about 12 noon? In point of fact, I believe that less is usually better than more. There may be something on your part that says, I want to make, especially after COVID, where we weren't together, I want to make this the best Christmas ever, the best Thanksgiving ever, the most wonderful Advent ever, whatever. But less is usually better than more. Keep things as low key as possible. And please don't take offense if your loved one chooses not to participate, even after all your planning. And that's tough. I remember when my mother-in-law was struggling with dementia many years ago, and we planned Christmas where she lived and had made special arrangements for dinner there. And we went there and she said, well, I've already eaten. She'd forgotten that we'd made arrangements to go down and have a special meal, and the meal came up and she just ate it. So we went down and we chatted, but I remember thinking, here we made this plan and she just sort of totally forgot it. I didn't take it personally, but it was kind of funny on the one hand. On the other hand, it was just that it was time for dinner. They brought the dinner, so she had dinner. And I think sometimes we can feel bad or get angry or agitated about that. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Can you another thing to ask yourself, are there ways to simplify your job expectations so they can take up less of your time in home thoughts? Because, that's always there. Another one that I find many carers have a really hard time with. Are there ways that others have offered to assist you? Can you take them up on their offers? Maybe you need some time away from your loved one and they have a friend from a neighbor that can come over and be with them and share some stuff together while you get some time and space to get a little bit of a respite. How do you ask for help? The reality is if a person can't do it, they can say no. But I think many of us think we can do it. We can do it. And in fact, we can't do it all. And just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And that's my personal mantra in my life these days. I am able to do a lot of things, but I don't have to. Our yard was full of yard waste from all kinds of trees and stuff. Okay, at one point in my life, my husband and I could have gone out and done that. We could have, but should we have? We didn't. So again, asking the person who takes care of our yard to do that today was a real blessing. And maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's a friend from church, maybe it's another family member who could do that just to give you some time. I think it's important that you take into account a loved one's limits and help the people who are coming to holiday events to understand about hearing, about vision, about mental abilities, about physical abilities, about speech issues. Some people post-stroke may have speech issues and people want to share, and touch works well sometimes. We have to be careful again with COVID protocols, etc. But and also people's need for rest. If the person falls asleep while you're talking to them, don't take offense. They're tired, and there's a lot of hustle bustle. Now, even when I have my family here, I'm realizing that I'm more tired after a big event than I used to be when I was younger. And whether the person wishes to share, and that, they may just turn away. Don't take it personally. I think we need to be aware of other family and friends' concerns and expectations. First of all, I would not invite all of their family and friends over at the same time. I have a friend now who's taking a lot of immunotherapy, and if this immunotherapy doesn't work, she is probably going to be transitioned to hospice. And her family has all been here since the diagnosis and staying with her off and on, but they're coming one or two at a time. They're coming for a longer period of time, and they're spending that quality time with her, knowing that this could be the last holiday, this could be the last time. She's ready for it, they're ready for it. But the reality, it's a few at a time and not all of them together. I think there would be 10 to try to celebrate or deal with her, and she's feeling very loved and cared about as a result. But there are times when she just has to sleep and it's too much. Remember generational misassumptions or assumptions. Many younger people believe, there goes my thing. Many younger people believe that older people who have dementia are sad older people. And maybe you need to teach them how to be able to communicate with one because of the dementia. What I find is that we either tend to really expect too much or not expect enough, because the person, I don't know why my TV is doing that. Sorry about that. So it's important to alert family and friends or anyone else who might visit during the holiday time to the current situation, especially if they have not seen a person in some time. And I think that will be more true this time of the holiday season than other times, because people have had so many months of being apart. I want to speak a little bit now about long distance. Be sure to include long distance families and plans. As someone who's a long distance carer, I want to say it's very difficult when I can't eyeball my sister-in-law to see how she's doing. So I depend on my nephew to tell me what's going on, what's happening with his mom. And her dementia is deteriorating. And I know that now, but if I were to walk in there and not have that information about her, I might be shocked or concerned. When you're Zooming or doing other kinds of calls, find out the best time for those who might like to Zoom or call. And make sure that it's the best time for your loved one, not necessarily the person who's calling. And that may be a bit of a hassle, but I think it's well worth it to have good interactions online. Simplify and simplify and simplify. Think about that. What do you do each holiday? How can you simplify it? Coach all to be mindful of the feelings and space concerns of a person cared for. If somebody's in a wheelchair, for example, it's real important that the little kids don't jump all over that wheelchair or the person. Teach them about this. Be tuned in to nonverbal communication. I may say, "Oh, I'm so happy," and have tears in my eyes. Watch for what's going on nonverbally. And I always encourage family members, especially in our society right now, to learn what hot button or other topics to avoid. And I don't think that the elder being cared for or the care partner or anybody else needs to be subjected to a rant about something they could have avoided. And that's not grief. It's things like politics and religion and vaccination and things like that. Have patience with hearing the same story over and over again. If you come to my house at Christmas, you'll learn the story of every single ornament. Many, many years ago, my daughter said, why don't you just do a video so I don't have to hear this every year? Well, I imagine if I had dementia, I'd be still telling those stories. They're important to me. Is it the ornament? No, it's the person who gave it to me. It's where I was when I got it, when I was in England, or my grandmother made this and used to put $1 in there when we were little kids, and it was always on the tree. Use familiar music, rituals, and phrases to assist participation, and go with the flow. Don't correct or make up stories. Use empathy, not sympathy. Demonstrate love and caring in shared responses, and smile. Learn from the person you care for. What does the person you care for teach you? I've been amazed in my over 50 years of working with older adults, how much I have learned about patience, about seeing the world through a different lens, and about love despite disabilities. Tell a person out loud that they are loved, if you can say so honestly. So it's important that we have respect and acceptance. And this is key. Respect who the person has been, this teacher, this person who could fix anything, and accept where they are now. Maybe they can't even hold something together to put it together in a jigsaw puzzle after being the world's best jigsaw solver. So think about that and understand the limits. Now, it's important for your own self-care that you listen to and take cues from your loved one's emotions. Here's, if somebody seems to be more agitated or upset, what's going on? Is there too much holiday commotion? Is there too much holiday commotion for you and you're being short with your loved one? Hear the stories about past holidays. How many times do you wish you would have heard something from someone who's now not in your life that you wish you knew? Work together to plan what is most important and enough. Remember to recharge yourself, relax. Don't get so uptight that you lose the joy of the holiday. Eat right. There's a real tendency during the holidays to overeat on the wrong things. Communicate. Be willing to take those moments of joy or those moments of sharing. Hydrate. Get enough water, get enough fluids. We tend not to do that. Accept assistance. Those people who offer to help will help, but they need to know that you need help. Respite, take some time away. Get adequate sleep. We spend so many times, and I have known this, Christmas Eve, making things for my daughter and my grandson to the late hours, and then I'm exhausted on Christmas Day. So, and to exercise. You know, I know it's hard in the winter in the Seattle area, but we need to do that. Reach out to your own emotional and spiritual supports. Have and express gratitude to the person you care for. And I found it helpful to journal about your experiences. So you write them down and you don't take your frustrating feelings out on the person you care for. I think it's really important that we give up our own agenda. If you can't make connection at one time, you need to walk away and come back. That's a way of taking care of yourself. Share moments of love often. And it's important for you to keep hope alive in this season for you and your loved ones, whatever that season is. So before we have questions, I just want to share with you a thought about the holidays and keeping a sense of hope. We need to keep a sense of hope, and that's a spiritual issue. It's a psychological issue. It's a lot of different things. We have to have hope that this holiday will be the best that we can do given our limits and our loved ones' limits. Hope is an act of collaboration. It cannot be achieved alone. We offer grains or fragments of hope to one another so that everybody's sense of possibility can grow. In this way, we can do together what might seem to be impossible alone. That's a quote from Kathleen Fisher, a UW graduate in the School of Social Work also. Dr. Fisher has a lot of work in spirituality and aging, but I think this really does speak to us about how we can reframe what we're experiencing to make moments of joy while still dealing with the issues. There's a reason, because of our darkness, that this is a season when our holidays are holidays of light. And think of that as you light candles, as you share Christmas trees, you look at the fireworks, whatever. This can be a season and an act of hope if you work on it together, but you need to take care of yourself first. Okay, do we have any questions? I think it's 2:40. Yasmin?
Yes, hello. We do have some questions. I will start with the first one that we received. Thank you again so much for that, Marty. Our first question is, do you have any advice for engaging loved ones and helping them shape their holiday experience when they seem depressed and withdrawn and simply don't want to contribute to their ideas or interact? For example, if you're asking them, what lights they want you to put up or what food you want, or they would like you to serve and other things, but they don't really give you any responses and just seem withdrawn. Do you have any advice for
Well,
that?
first of all, I think we have to accept that's where they're coming from. But I often will offer a choice. Like, do you think we should have ham or turkey? Do you think we should make pancakes or what else for Hanukkah? Do you think, so that they make one or two choices. But I think it's important if we respect the person saying, I'm not interested, and just generally be there and, hold their hand and do what you need to do. But you can't force anyone who's really down to be involved and in a part of the whole experience. That's where they are at that moment. And I think it's real hard for us because we're trying so hard. But if we accept the person who they are right now, I think we'll go with that. And then to check if something else is going on with them. Sometimes people have depression because of the holidays, but there may also be physiological or changes in their condition as well. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Our next question was, can you explain a little bit about what a care manager does?
Yes. A care manager is a person that either is part of a agency, a public agency for people with limited income, or you can hire privately to care for your loved one to help you do the things you can't do if you're long distance, or help you in consultation with your loved one to figure out what resources are available, how you might do them, do an assessment like for environmental issues, like is the house safe? Are there throw rugs? Are there that are not safe? Are there handles in the bathtub and raised toilet seats and things, to that extent? And then maybe offer to the caregiver some resources for them in terms of support groups for dementia or other illnesses as well. And just to be another set of eyes and ears with the older person who's getting elder care from you.
Thank you, Marty. Our next question. My loved one has advanced Parkinson's, which makes it difficult for most people to understand what they're saying because it's difficult for them to speak. However, one of our family members has a talent for kind of always being able to understand and translate what this loved one's saying. Based on this, is it okay or encouraged for this family member to sort of serve as a translator in this way when there are other family members around? Or is that, seen as taking away the loved one's dignity? Or what advice do you have for those kind of situations?
It really depends on the person with Parkinson's. How do they feel about that? And the willingness of the person to do the translation. I think most family members would like to understand what the person's saying. And if they just give up and walk away because they don't understand, that's one set of issues. But the other set of issues is rightly brought up by the person who asked the question. And that is that, maybe the person feels something's taken away by having another person there. But I think that the person to ask is the person himself. I remember one person with Parkinson's that I knew whose grandchildren said, "Grandpa, you never smile anymore." And he didn't. His face was pretty frozen. And he said, he still had good speech, but I think that it's important to remember this. He said, "I may not smile, but I'm smiling in my heart. Just remember that." And it was a way of making a connection in communication, even though she was reading, she's a little kid, reading him as not loving her or something. So there, it's always the translation of this, that concern and that connection gets passed along as well. That's a really good question, because you don't want to take away anybody's independence to do what they can do, but sometimes you need to fill in the blanks for what they can't do.
Thank you. We have a couple in here in between the questions, just a couple of comments of people thanking you, and also saying that they're grateful that the care facilities that their loved ones live in have, in-person meals scheduled for Thanksgiving and Christmas, so they can do these small in-person celebrations instead of having to wave from the window, in the early days of COVID and things like that. And
yes. It's been, my sister-in-law lives in assisted living in Spokane, has gone through that. Now that her family was able to come and visit, then they had another COVID case in Spokane, and now one person can come in and they can take her out, but they can't do anything inside right now together. It's a hard time for us.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. The same person also said they're really, in case this resonates with anyone, something they want to do with one of their loved ones, this person's really looking forward to meeting up with their mother and watching holiday programs together, such as Call the Midwife, a holiday special on PBS.
Oh,
so
yes.
If that sounds fun to anyone, please feel free to participate.
Yeah, or even old movies, like Miracle on 34th Street, or whatever those ones are. I can't remember them all right now, but yeah, if the person likes movies, that's something to share. Yeah, and old-fashioned actors and ways of doing things, but Midwife is great.
Another question we have here. My family was planning on traveling to celebrate Thanksgiving with my grandparents this year because my grandfather's health was declining. However, he recently passed away last weekend. We're still going to be traveling, so my grandmother won't be alone. But do you have any suggestions for this family or other families going through a similar situation where everything was planned around someone whose health was in decline, but that family member unfortunately passed away before they could all get together? What do they do now?
I think sharing stories about him, it's so new and it's so raw for all of them. That's very difficult, and it will be difficult for them to go, and it will be difficult for their grandma too. But allowing the stories to flow, being very kind and gentle to her, because she may say or do things that seem odd, but this is pretty close to the time of the death. Have a toast to Grandpa, with sparkling water or champagne or something, that, he was so much a part of this family, and he's here with us in spirit, or, whatever their belief system might be, to have, some spiritual time together about sharing what they're grateful about grandpa and what they learned from him, and maybe writing that down in a journal or something to have that grandma could have after they go home. Those are just a few ideas, but you got to go with the flow with that person, because who knows? What I know about grief is people experience it in very, very different ways, and go with what's going on for her, maybe not what's going on for you, but maybe process that in a different place. It just depends on the family and how you do that. But obviously grandpa was special and need to really honor that.
Thank you. I love that suggestion you made about the memory journal that you can then leave with the grandma.
Mm-hmm. And anybody can do that. You can write a memory journal at like Thanksgiving or Christmas and whatever. And then if there are other holidays with that loved one or not, you have the journal of remembrances of what you did.
That's great. Love that one. We had another this one was more of a comment, saying that there's an app called StoryCorps that you can use to record interviews with your loved ones or capture memories and stories. So for anyone whose grandfather or loved one is still around for Thanksgiving, that could be a great idea for recording things. Kathleen also sent a link to their website in chat. So anyone who's interested in that, please check out the link.
And even if you don't do the StoryCorps, even if you record it, for those of you who have lost someone, I think about my Aunt Tony, who has birthdays around Christmas time, and I hear her voice. She was 103 and a half when she died, and I think of the holidays with her, and she's in my head, but I never recorded any of it. And I wished I had her voice in my head just to have.
Great reminder.
Yeah.
I think you touched on this a little, but another question. For families celebrating with someone who's in the very end stages of life, what suggestions do you have for everyone being able to spend time with them? So if it's a big group and everyone's really only there for one day, is it best that everyone still spreads out their visits to this person's bedside, or gather by the bedside all together in a big group?
That's hard. You got to know your family. I think if you want really good communication, one-on-one is better. But many families gather at the end around and have a service or sing hymns or whatever. Then I think having the group together. I remember one family who did this, and they sang hymns together, and their loved ones said, "Amen, God bless you all," and died. So, yeah. So there are, pros and cons of each, but my first instinct would be to go one-on-one for short periods, not long periods, to be able to say goodbye and I love you and I care about you. Then maybe the group wants to do a kind of a service or whatever around that person, with that person, maybe with their clergy or whatever. I've seen it done both ways. I have been a part of both of those with people, and the group singing of a hymn or reading of poem or some kind of ritual, it doesn't have to be religious, around that person can be helpful.
Great suggestions. Thank you. We had quite a few thank you messages in here, so I'll read out the latest one that came in, saying thank you for the suggestion about letting additional family members know of any changes in the loved one's health or situation ahead of time. This person has a relative that has been losing their sight, and another relative who doesn't know that will be joining them. So a good reminder that they can set these expectations, before everyone's all together, so there's less kind of surprises in the moment. And with that, we just have 5 minutes left. So if anyone has any last minute questions, or if there were any questions that were missed that I unfortunately didn't see, please resend. But I think I got through everything that's been submitted so far. But like I said, we still have a few minutes left, so please, if anyone's got questions, shoot them over in the chat. You can send them to me directly, privately, or to everyone. Okay, it looks like I don't see any typing happening. We'll give it just another minute. We've got a lot of thank yous coming in. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Just a reminder to everyone, a recording of this session will be sent out to everyone who registered. Even if you joined us late, as long as you registered for the event, you will be sent a recording once it is edited and finished. Should be within the next 2 weeks. So please just look out for that in your email. Still enough time to ask another question if anyone's got one. Still getting a lot of thank yous from Marty and saying that this has been helpful. Reminders to keep communication open are great. But I think that's all the questions we have. Still a lot more thank yous, of course. Everyone is very grateful for your time and expertise, Marty.
It's really been wonderful to be here. I just want to share one last picture, and that's this picture of hope at the end of the tunnel. It is filled with light, and these are holidays in our very gray season of light, all of them that we celebrate. And I hope for each of you and your loved ones and the people around you, I wish for you a very quiet, peaceful, and joyful holiday season.
Thank you so much, Marty. And thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you for everyone who submitted questions. Thank you for all of your nice feedback and for sending these thank you messages in the chat. I think it is okay for us to wrap up just 2 minutes ahead of schedule since there aren't any other questions. Thank you again, everyone, and look out for not only the recording, but there will also be a survey sent out to everyone to collect feedback about the event. So please be sure to fill that out so we can use that to plan our future events. Thank you again, and I hope everyone enjoys the holidays with their families.